So I've defined networking as building relationships, and I've stressed to you why it's so important. Now I want to give you some strategies for building relationships. And when I say building relationships, these have to be strong relationships in order for them to yield both opportunities and enjoyment for you. And that's what networking is really about. So what I tell professionals about networking is that you should focus on building personal relationships and friendships. Don't just think about growing your contact database. Focus on the personal side of things. Get to know people. Take note of their families, their interests, their hobbies. Foster trust with people. People generally give business to people that are, one, good at what they do, and two, that they are comfortable with. So you need to foster that trust so people become comfortable with you. And then they want to engage with you. They want to work with you. One example that I'll give you, when I was doing design work as a civil engineer, there was an architect in town that I wanted to reach out to and become friendly with and eventually hopefully work with. So I met him at an event, I exchanged contact information, and then I followed up on him. I went out to lunch a few times, I got to know this person. And he did a lot of design in the school industry, especially green design of schools. So if I were to see an article about green design of schools, what I would do is I would shoot it over to him. I would email him and say, hey Michael, I just wanted to send you this article. I found it to be very informative and I thought you would too. I didn't say anything about, do you have any work for us? Or do you need help with any projects? I was just trying to be a resource and provide value. And more times than not, if he were to get a project where he needed an engineer, he would contact our office. Why? Because he trusted me, he was comfortable with me, and he wanted to work with us. So I know this all sounds good, but the question that I always get from AEC professionals is, but how do I actually network? Like, what do I actually say when I go to an event? So let me give you some tips that you can use when you go to your next networking event. First and foremost, be prepared to ask the right questions. Don't just walk up to someone at an event and say, what do you do? That's what everybody says. It's okay to ask that question, but have a good follow-up. Like, for example, what do you do? Well, I'm a structural engineer. I work on high-rise buildings. Oh, that sounds great. What made you want to get into that field? Then the person's going to start to elaborate. Well, you know, when I was a kid, I always liked looking at buildings. And then that really starts a conversation where you can connect with someone. The worst thing you can do is just say, oh, what do you do? A structural engineer. Oh, okay. I'm a civil engineer. Maybe we can work together. That doesn't get the conversation flowing. The next tip is listen to what they have to say. There's no point in asking all these great questions if you're not going to listen and take in the information and process it and then build on it, maybe with follow-up questions or more conversation. Your body language is also very important in a conversation. If you're speaking with someone at an event, the last thing that you want to be doing is looking at the conversation next to you or checking on your phone or doing something else. That body language is important in the connection that you're building with that person. So be focused on that person. Listen to them, look at their mouth when they're speaking. You always want to try to add value to the conversation and the relationship beyond just that initial conversation. If there's value that you can offer, for example, if someone's talking about a project they're working on, you might say, oh, you know what, we did some work in that area. Here are some things that I can tell you that you should be aware of. All of a sudden, oh, wow, you know, Anthony's giving me information right here that I can use on my project. That's great. Or if someone says, well, you know, I really want to work on these skills, you might say, well, you know what, there's a great book that I read that will help you with that. Always try to add value to the conversation and then the relationship as a whole. Try to take the relationship beyond the initial meeting as early on as possible. Plant the seed for the next step. Maybe say something like, you know, I really enjoy talking to you here. I'd love to learn a little bit more about you and how I can help you in your company. Can we have breakfast or lunch one day next week? Oh yeah, great, shoot me an email. Take their card and then follow up. That's how you can really plant that seed for building that relationship down the road, beyond that initial contact, that initial business card. And the last point that I have to stress is don't just try to sell yourself. The worst thing is when someone goes into a networking meeting and walks right up to someone and says, how you doing? My name is Anthony. I do this kind of engineering. Is there any projects that we can help you with? Nobody wants to hear that. That's a turnoff. That happens a lot too to me with young engineers with their resumes. They'll come to an event, they'll walk up to me, say, hi, you know, my name is Mary. I'm unemployed right now. Here's my resume. Can you help me? I didn't even get a chance to tell you what I do. So remember, ask the right questions, listen intently, focus on your body language, add value to the relationship where you can. Plant the seed for follow-up immediately, and don't just be a salesperson.